Everybody is aware of that. And I am going to begin by sharing my screen so that everybody will hopefully see the PowerPoint presentation that focuses predominantly on risk management. This is mostly just presentation time for us. I'm not here today to give you anything like an exhaustive introduction to traveling in Africa in general or traveling in Tanzania in specific. This is really just meant to get the wheels turning around the nature of the experience that we are all going to share when we're in Tanzania. Okay, let's see if I can make this share screen thing work. Um, I'm terrible at this. All right, so what I'd just like to do is make sure I believe that everybody is now able to see my Tanzania presentation. Have I got that correct? Can somebody just give me a thumbs up if they're seeing it?
All good.
Thank you so much. That's perfect. Okay, so we're going to begin the presentation straight away then. Other people may join. I may not notice if that happens. If you see somebody waiting in the waiting room for some reason, please do take a moment and click them in, whether that needs to be Allison McLean or anybody else in the meeting. I don't know. So let's just see how that goes. I don't want anybody waiting out in the cold. Okay, let's get started. Karibu Tanzania. This is welcome to Tanzania. See if I can figure out how to advance my slides here. Okay. I want to quickly start off with some introductions and then some of the upcoming steps. We're not going to talk about those upcoming steps, things that we need to sort of proceed with after this meeting is over in the very near future, but I want to mention them so that you see them coming. I'm going to talk a little bit about what risk management is and why we need to do it. And I'll mention a few things, things to prepare for and be aware will be coming as part of the travel experience. A little bit of a summary of the itinerary, but I'm not going to get into those details extensively, and things to think about after you return. Risk management doesn't end when we are wheels up at Kilimanjaro International. It ends after a few weeks have gone by when you have returned to Canada. So first thing I want to do is introductions. I will introduce myself and then let Dr. McLean introduce herself. We're not, I think because we've got quite a large group today, forgive me for not suggesting we do a big round table and have everybody introduce themselves to everybody else. We'll have lots of time for that later on. So my name is, as you may have figured out, my name is Jeremy Kerr. I'm a professor of biology at University of Ottawa. Until last year, I was department chair. I've held university research chairs at University of Ottawa for a long time. I study conservation and global change biology. Let's pop in, let Cassidy in here. Um, and I created this course about 17 or 18 years ago. I don't remember how many times we've run it now, but this course is something we've been doing for a long time, and we have crafted this course specifically to be the most exciting and wonderful thing we can think of. When I say that, I mean it literally. We designed this course to be the coolest thing we could imagine, and then just stuck all the cool stuff we can do in this part of the world into the same course. So the tone of what's coming up in this presentation is going to sound very bleak because this is risk management, and I want you to have some, kind of caution guards up around the edges of how you're thinking about things. But remember that this experience should be truly wondrous, and that is what we are trying to go for. Dr. McLean, I wonder if you could introduce yourself now.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Allison McLean. I'm also a professor at the University of Ottawa in the biology department. My focus is mostly on plant biology, so I'm considered the plant biologist, if you will, or a plant biologist in the department. I've been in the department for 8 years now, I think. I teach plant development and plant immunity, plant-focused courses. And last year, I had the privilege of teaching this course as well with Dr. Kerr for the first time. It was an absolutely amazing experience, and I loved it very much. I'm very happy to be back with you guys this year as well. And I think that's about all I need to say about myself at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Please do feel free throughout our presentation today to let us know if you'd like to ask questions. We will be happy to answer questions, but I also would like to try to make sure this presentation doesn't end up eating up your entire Sunday. Everything else is going to be recorded here, and all of the slides that I'm showing you today will be available to you later on. So if there's a little bit of material that you miss, don't worry, you can go back and review it, and you will be hearing from us fairly regularly as we get closer and closer to wheels up from Canada or wherever you're traveling from to get to Tanzania. First thing I'd like you to please keep in mind as we are going through this course, we are traveling as a group, not 26 individuals. That means we are a team. We're there to support and assist each other in terms of our learning and in terms of our safety. And the idea is that we would like all of us to be acting at all times in a way that will enrich the overall experience that each of us takes away from the Tanzania Field Course in 2026. No one stays behind. No one strays ahead. We stay together as a group at all times. The only conceivable exceptions to the no one stays behind rule might be if somebody feels very sick on a day, they could in theory stay in the camp. There will be a field crew that is present there, so no one is ever truly alone. Don't feel concerned about that. If something like that happens, we will be staying in touch to make sure that people are recovering, but we'll talk a little bit more about things like that. At all times, what I would very strongly ask you to do, urge you to do, is consider how your actions when we are in the airport or on the field course, your inactions, things you fail to do, or your attitudes will affect everybody else in the course. Again, our objective is to try to make this as positive as we can make it. Anything that you do or don't do, or that you say that may be, kind of a caustic or somehow damaging to group morale, all these things can degrade the nature of our experience, and we hope that you'll be able to avoid anything of a negative nature as far as this goes. Both Dr. McLean and I are, I think it's safe to say, Allison, leaders with respect to equity, diversity, and inclusion, both in our department, our faculty, our university, and indeed in the scientific world in Canada. We take inclusion extremely seriously, and this course is designed to be inclusive and profoundly, truly, and sincerely respectful of diversity in all its forms. We do not compromise on these points. Allison, is there anything you wanted to add to anything I've said there?
No,
Okay.
all is good.
All right. So things that are coming up that I'd like you to simply be aware are present so that you're not surprised by something when it appears. The waiver, everybody must sign an absolutely intense waiver. Um, the risk management assignment, that is the part 2 of this part 1 presentation, is due at the end of the month. Both the waiver and the risk management assignment are mandatory to participate in the course. Starting really any time now, today, tomorrow, the day after, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, it will be time to apply for an e-visa to enter Tanzania. All of us will apply for a visa prior to departure. It used to be possible to apply for a visa in the airport, and it might still be possible, but Tanzania is moving away from that version of a visa application, and I would now advise against relying on an in-airport visa application. Do it in advance. We'll be sending out a message about this. This will include a link to the single correct site to begin that process. You must make sure your passport is valid for 6 months after we return from Tanzania. That is, it must be valid until maybe 2nd or 3rd of March 2026. And you must have at least one blank page in your passport for the immigration officers to stamp. If that is not the case for you, you need to apply for a new passport, and you should do so immediately. If you haven't started already, now is the time to make an appointment for travel medicine. We will not advise you in any formal sense about your medical needs, as neither of us is qualified to speak to your and private medical details, but it is important for you to begin that process. Okay, very, very cursory introduction contextually to some of the very recent history of Tanzania. It is in East Africa. It has a strongly colonial history that included both German colonizers and then subsequently post-World War I British colonizers. Tanzania is itself a kind of a synthetic country whose borders are a reflection partly of that colonial past and partly of the post-colonial merger of two separate nations called Tanganyika and Zanzibar. Add those two things together, and the broader Tanzanian community decided to call their new country Tanzania. This was founded in 1964, so the country as a formal political entity is relatively recent, but the cultural history of this part of the world is very deep and is a much more substantive kind of phenomenon than this very short colonial past suggests. Tanganyika, the mainland part of Tanzania, was a product of what is called the British gradualist policy, which was what the British did when they started divesting themselves of their global colonies, broadly speaking, after World War II. That was a policy intended to begin building institutions so that their colonies could transition peacefully to become independent. And of course, I'm not going to talk about the various horrors of colonialism, but they did actually make a conscious effort to divest themselves of colonies and have colonies stand up and be functionally independent. So Britain withdrew from Zanzibar, and almost immediately the there's a rather dark past in Zanzibar of slavery that was not a British phenomenon, but that was something that reflected Arab Indian histories. And the unrest began very quickly between 5 and 15,000 cultural Indians, that is, people who are culturally originating from India, but were really at that point native to Zanzibar, and Arabs were then slaughtered. Meanwhile, the new president of Tanzania, who's Julius Nyerere, who will also be known as Mwalimu, became president of Tanganyika democratically and negotiated Tanganyikan independence from Britain. He very quickly requested British troops to enter Zanzibar and Canadians actually, to um, cease the bloodshed, to end the internal civil strife that was causing so many deaths. And UK troops and Canadian peacekeepers then occupied Zanzibar until it looked like the place was going to be at least reasonably stable. And it has been reasonably stable ever since. So Mwalimu is a term from Swahili or Kiswahili, the language of Swahili, which simply means teacher. Julius Nyerere was a PhD trained economist. As the first president, he was referred to with very great reverence by his people as the teacher or Mwalimu. So that's where that term comes from. He is one of the brightest lights of African leadership and was famous for being absolutely incorruptible and truly a force for positive cultural and political development within East Africa and across Africa. So, a little bit about the geography of Africa, East Africa, especially around Tanzania. Can anybody tell me, put their hands up and just tell me where Tanzania is on this map? Anyone want to take I'm expecting everybody here not to know the answers to questions that I'm putting forward. These are coming out of left field. They're not, intelligence testing questions. They're, do you know some factoids about this part of the world? And there's no reason to think you would in advance. So please do feel free to take a guess. Anybody? I can't see who that is, but Elizabeth, and now I can.
The green?
Yes.
Yes.
So the green bit is Tanzania. What is to the north of Tanzania? Anybody want to take a guess at that? Elizabeth again.
Kenya?
Yes, indeed. Next is Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC. This is a complicated bit of landscape, okay? This is not like Canada or, you know, even many European countries don't have this many neighbors. Malawi and Mozambique. So they've got a lot of neighbors. Be aware that the geography and cultural complexity of this landscape can be very high. Tanzania has really two official languages. Swahili is the first one. The second one is a kind of unofficial English. Many people speak English, but there are tribal languages across Tanzania, and they number something like 150 tribal languages are spoken in Tanzania. It's a complex landscape, okay? So don't consider that Tanzanians are a monolithic entity. They are as complex as any nation in the world. And my slides are frozen. Okay, come on. There's Angola. That's getting into West Africa. Okay, sorry. Um, a little bit about the pathway that we're going to be following. So I've got these little dots on maps here that illustrate more or less the sequential order that we will be passing through Tanzania in. So we're going to be starting off, the letter S is in the bottom right-hand side here. That's at Kilimanjaro International Airport, southwest of Moshi, southeast of the city of Arusha. We will be going directly from the airport to Moshi. When we're in Moshi, we're going to be staying in a very nice but somewhat out of the way area just because we would like everybody to have a soft landing when we get to Tanzania. So the resort that we are staying in is quite comfortable. And hopefully at that time, you're going to have a chance to even swim, but also just to get over the initial surprise of jet lag, the fatigue of the travel itself, and so on. We're going to be going up, partially up Mount Kilimanjaro to a chaga, that is a local tribal community village called Mataruni on the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro. We'll be doing some really cool cultural stuff there, as well as going for a walk to the very boundary of the national park and a giant waterfall that is found there. After that, we're going to be heading down to the southeast. That's number 3 on the map, to a place called Mkomazi National Park. Very, very few people ever go to this national park. So when we have completed this course, you will be one of the few people you meet who has, if you meet people who have been to East Africa, you will be one of the very few people to go to Mkomazi. When we are in Mkomazi, there is a very particular reason we're going there, and it has to do with extremely urgent, really, conservation issues around the protection and recovery of wild dog populations and black rhinoceros populations. Our plan in going there, and it's going to be a very early departure from Moshi to get there, is for you to experience wild dogs and black rhinos. There are almost no places in East Africa where you can reliably find either of those species, but in Umkomazi, you should be able to see them both. We will see them in as part of captive breeding programs. Okay. After that, we're going to number 4. That is Arusha National Park. I think of this as a kind of pocket park. It's not large, but it is topographically very diverse. And the consequence is that there is an amazing variety of habitats that are present here, and biodiversity in this place is truly gigantic. It has the complete suite of virtually all of the big wildlife species that you can find, but not rhinos and not lions. After that, we're going to Tarangire. When we are at Tarangire, we're going to be based at number 6 here in a little town called Mtawambu. That is the river of mosquitoes. It's not very appealing, but it is. We're going to be staying at a very beautiful campsite there, right on a cliff face at the edge of the Rift Valley. And if you are wondering why we picked that, we picked it because it's the most beautiful place we could find in that part of the world. So that's going to be a theme that emerges over and over again. Tarangire National Park is based around the Tarangire River, which runs through the middle of it. It's peak dry season. You're going to find a lot of wildlife populations um, converging on the water that is available at the river there and at a wetland to the south of Tarangire called Silale, which we anticipate we will be visiting. All of the big species are found in Tarangire except for rhinos. After that, we will be heading up to Serengeti. Serengeti is the crown jewel of national parks. There is just no more glorious a place on earth, for my money, than Serengeti National Park. Tons of amazing species to be found there. And finally, we're going to be doing Ngoro Ngoro Crater in the Ngoro Ngoro Conservation Area. So that is not a national park, but the crater is a zone within a conservation area that is quite strongly protected relative to the surrounding areas, which are also somewhat protected. There are people in Ngorongoro conservation area, especially the Maasai, who maintain quite a large population within this area, and they conduct cattle grazing and traditional pastoral activities. Okay, so the lingua franca in Tanzania, as I mentioned, is Swahili, as we typically refer to it, or Kiswahili, which is a more proper way to refer to it. That is just the language of Swahili or the Swahili language. Many, many other languages spoken there, as I mentioned. There are also cultural communities that are large and have a long history within this landscape that originate elsewhere, particularly Indian communities, and you may find Hindi speakers and so on. You'll also find virtually every religion that I'm aware of present within this place as well, and a respected part of this very diverse cultural mosaic. Elizabeth, I just want to make sure, do you have your hand up still? Is that lingering or is there a new question?
Sorry, that's my bad.
No problem. So English is widely spoken and understood. In Swahili, we refer to English as Kiingereza. That is the language of English. So Ki is language. Most people that we encounter will speak respectable English or good English. But be patient if folks have challenges understanding you. Okay, so risk management. Let's get on with, the real meat of what we're doing here. We're traveling somewhere new, and that means you should be anticipating new experiences. It is a truism and terribly obvious for me to say Tanzania is different from Canada. The thing you have to understand and remember as we travel there, as we experience these things that we've set up for you, even things that seem familiar can be different from what you expect in quite meaningful ways that may surprise you. Walking across the street in Tanzania may not be the same experience that you have here walking across the street. This means that the risk profile of everyday activities can be quite different than what you're used to, even if they feel like everyday activities that you do here. Risk management as a formal practice exists to identify and assess the likelihood and severity of risks relative to the benefits of taking the risk. It helps to have some intro to the kinds of things that may present challenges for you in country. We'll talk about some of those kinds of experiences and examples in just a moment, but please understand that what I say here can never be exhaustive in any, for any reason, but in much the same way that going to Algonquin Park, we could do a very familiar kind of risk management assessment for a nearby provincial park in Ontario, and we could never go through all of the things that could present risks to you in that place, or even just going to a city park here in Ottawa. Okay, so this is the conventional risk management matrix. Across the top is the severity of risks. They go from acceptable to intolerable. By severity, what I mean is how bad is it if whatever it is happens to you? The other part of the risk management matrix is the likelihood of risk. So it goes from improbable to probable. And improbable isn't a single thing like 10%. Improbable could be 0.01%, or improbable could be 20%. It sort of just depends. This is a way to think about risks, not a crystallized category like studying the periodic table, where every distinctive element is specifically and identifiably different than every other element. Okay, so severity varies, likelihood varies, and the rewards for incurring a risk also vary, but we're not going to emphasize that here. Never take a risk if you're not going to get something good out of it, even no matter how small the risk is. There's just no reason to do it. So risk management. Let me just say, first of all, remember that we are in this together. If you ever have a moment where you're not sure about something, ask someone. Even if you're just trying to get a gut check from another student in the course, it's always better to do that first if you're not sure, or ask an instructor, which is better yet, or ask one of the Tanzanian support crew. We will always answer questions about this, and if you're unsure, we're there to help. Okay? So risk management comes down to something really simple. Is the risk-reward ratio favorable? And can mitigation change the risk-reward ratio and make the reward more likely to not lead to a serious risk? So what it comes down to is, what is the chance that this will go wrong, whatever it is? And what could happen if it does go wrong? Now we're going to take some time over this because many of these things are unfamiliar in specific senses to people. But also, please keep in mind that we are all university trained people. There's nothing about this that is conceptually complicated. We're not doing the Krebs cycle. We're not doing quantum mechanics. This is risk management. This is conceptually really simple stuff, but please bear with me as I go through it, as I would like you please to simply be aware of the structured thinking that is part of this approach that should affect how you make decisions in country. Another thing that I would like you to do is acknowledge uncertainty. Something that may seem to be like very unlikely to happen might not be correctly unlikely in this environment that you are not personally very familiar with. Similarly, something that may not seem to lead to something serious in your judgment might actually lead to something very serious indeed. Again, you're not an expert in being in places you have not experienced. and other people around you will be relative experts. So please follow instructions from instructors and the Tanzanian support crew at all times. What I would like you to do is assume that the likelihoods of risk could be higher than what you think, and the severity of consequences could be greater than what you think. In all cases with risk management, prevention is the first and best solution to a problem. Managing the severity of consequences is part of risk management, is really important, but it is second best. Prevent things from happening rather than trying to mitigate the severity of something that does happen. So what are the three riskiest things for us in Tanzania? Speaking in very general terms, I don't mean like snakes, lions, and meteors. What I speak in very general terms here. First of all, personally foolish behavior. Deliberately breaking the rules or disregarding specific guidance from the instructors or the Tanzanian field crew is a very good way to change the risk management matrix in ways that can hurt you or hurt other people. So personally foolish behavior. Second, foolish behavior by somebody around you. Doesn't much matter if you're being very safe, if you're not really commenting on the fact that somebody right next to you is doing something that is putting you at risk. So like jumping out of a safari vehicle and going and trying to pet the elephant might get everybody in the safari vehicle killed when the elephant runs over, rolls the vehicle over, and stomps on it. So these are the kinds of things, like obviously, these are caricatures of behaviors, and I know nobody's going to do this, but bear with me. And finally, lack of awareness. This is a form of personally foolish behavior, but I'm going to list it here separately. It's important to simply keep your wits about you when we are in country. Just look to see what's going on. If you see people around you, for example, and you're in a shop somewhere and we're doing some like cultural thing, like we're, buying art, if you wanted to, you can do that. And you see suddenly there is like a serious argument breaking out between a couple of apparent Tanzanians at the front of the store, it is probably a good idea for you to leave the store. Okay, things like that. Just be aware of what's going on around you. So here's a quiet street picture in the town of Moshi, in the middle of the city. We are not going to be going to exactly this place, but we will be going to places that may look like this. It can be a little chaotic sometimes in the way that it appears to us coming from like highly developed countries, Canada in particular or others. Sometimes the noise and fuss and dust and the weird sounds and colors and smells can be a little bit overwhelming. But at all times, even if it feels overwhelming and like it might be a bit stressful, we must be respectful that we are visiting somebody else's country. So we should be respectful of mainstream Tanzanian society. In this picture, please take 1 second and observe what everybody is wearing. Now this, I'll say that you can't tell this from the photograph and it's a cloudy day in this picture, but on this day, it's maybe 28 or 29 degrees Celsius and quite dry out, so it's a hot summer day. What is everybody wearing? Again, there are no trick questions here. I'm not trying to fool anybody. Just tell me, what are they wearing? Just try to figure out who that is. Hello, Kit. Hi, Kit. So what are they wearing?
Looks like mostly pants or long skirts and t-shirts.
Right, so they're wearing long pants in all cases except one. And although you can't see this individual particularly clearly, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Are you seeing my cursor flash around on the screen here? This person is a child. A child is wearing shorts in this picture, but everybody who is a post-adolescent is wearing personally conservative clothing. Tanzanians don't wear miniskirts in places like this. They don't wear shorts virtually ever. They don't necessarily wear long sleeve shirts all the time, but you will find that they dress conservatively. Tanzanian society is a little conservative and traditional in most respects from a Canadian point of view. Just be aware of this, and when we are in urban areas, we will dress accordingly. So, distinctive risks, various environments arise from people and things people do. They can arise from animals, can be large, medium, small, or invisibly small. Plants, they can arise from parasites, they can arise from infectious diseases or vector-borne diseases. That is, something bites you and transmits a disease. Here's the question that many biologists are well aware of, but the most dangerous animal on Earth, but in Tanzania also, is I got Evan here first.
Mosquito.
So it is. This is an anopheline mosquito from genus Anopheles. There are a number of Anopheles mosquitoes that you'll find in Tanzania. You can tell if it is an Anopheles mosquito by the way it holds its abdomen when it is perched on something. Its abdomen tends to stick up into the air rather than be sort of parallel with whatever it's sitting on. Anopheles mosquitoes are dangerous because who was our second person there? Lindsay, I think you also had your hand up. Why are Anopheles mosquitoes particularly dangerous?
They transmit a whole host of diseases and
And that is true, and as do other kinds of mosquitoes. We are particularly concerned in Tanzania with one disease. Do you know off the top of your head what that one would be? Does anybody?
malaria.
Malaria. We would like very much to avoid dealing with malaria. And one of the reasons why I urge everybody to address travel medicine carefully is that you will almost certainly receive a prescription for anti-malarial drugs, which you should take while you are in country and for likely a few days, either just before and or just after your return. The reason for that is to disrupt Plasmodium's reproductive cycle in your red blood cells. Malaria is a disaster. So mosquito-borne diseases are the leading cause of animal-induced mortality. That is things that are transmitted by vectors in Africa and indeed around the world. Malaria is a very important disease in other places as well, especially Southeast Asia, but also Central and South America. So let's think about this from the perspective of our risk management matrix. And I'll just walk you through a structured approach to thinking about this risk. So what is the probability that we're going to encounter mosquitoes? I'm not expecting you to know the answers to questions like that until you've been to the country, but I'm just going to walk you through the structured approach. So I'll tell you the probability of encountering mosquitoes in Tanzania is very high. I would say it's more than 50% likely you're going to encounter mosquitoes, even though it is the dry part of the dry season. Mosquito populations go way down, but they don't disappear. The probability that mosquitoes carry malaria in areas that we visit is extremely low. In the dry season, endemic malaria, there is no endemic malaria in the places that we visit. That means malaria that you could catch from any mosquito at any time of year. But every once in a while in this part of Tanzania that we visit, there is malaria epidemic or outbreak. It is very unlikely that that will happen, especially by the time we get to August in the dry season. Epidemics are very unlikely. So the likelihood overall of encountering a malaria-carrying mosquito is, in the risk management matrix parlance, improbable. Unofficially, I would say it is extremely improbable, but it's not zero. The severity of a negative outcome should you encounter and be bitten by a malaria-carrying mosquito, on the other hand, is a different issue. The mosquito bite itself is generally not important. We've all been bitten by mosquitoes. If you ever been outside your home or even inside your home and anywhere in Canada. But if you catch malaria, the severity is extreme. That is the part of the risk management matrix that you all are talking about. So likelihood low, severity of the risk extreme. This means that there will be mitigation steps. So there's probably not that much that we can do to, reduce the likelihood of seeing a mosquito, but there certainly are things we can do to reduce the likelihood of being bitten. They are exactly the same things that work on mosquitoes here. Bug spray, if mosquitoes are around. That is prevention layer number 1. Cover up at dusk. So they especially seem to like the lower legs. So wear long pants as the afternoon wanes and we drift into evening. That's prevention layer number 2. Anti-malarial medication is prevention layer number 3. Now, prevention layer here is preventing malaria. We don't particularly care about mosquito bites for themselves, but we care about what mosquito bites can do to us. And our last layer of defense is to reduce the severity of the consequence. Our first 2 layers of defense are to reduce the likelihood of incurring the risk. So please note that distinction here. Prevention layers 1 and 2, reduce the likelihood you're exposed to malaria. Prevention layer number 3 is dealing with malaria should you be so incredibly unfortunate as to actually be bitten by a malaria-carrying mosquito, despite prevention layers 1 and 2. Okay, does that seem clear? The very structured approach to risk that we are suggesting you consider here. Okay, so here's our risk management matrix once again. Risks that we will not engage in if we can possibly conceivably avoid them will be things that lead to disaster. We don't really want disaster. What we really want is things that are improbable and where the severity of the consequence is acceptable. That's the part of the risk management matrix we would like to be living in while we are in Tanzania. So let's talk about a second risk, and one that many people find very worrying when we are talking about traveling to an African country. Let's talk about snakes. Probability of encountering snakes is, in the risk management parlance, improbable. In reality, unofficially speaking, I would say it is extremely improbable. We almost never see snakes on the course, and we have never seen a snake in any of the places that we are going to go to of the venomous variety. Last year, we did see a great big python up in a tree. That is not a dangerous snake for human beings, although it was a goddamned huge snake. I couldn't believe how big that thing was. That's the only time I've ever seen a python, and I've never seen a venomous snake in any area that we're visiting this year in the course. Severity of risk. Well, the risk of a bite, if encountered, is highly variable. I'm talking about venomous snakes. Non-venomous snakes also bite. That is also dangerous, but not on the same scale. So the risk of a bite, if encountered, is variable. It depends on the snake you meet. Some snakes want nothing to do with you. Well, no snake wants anything to do with you, but some venomous snakes defend themselves by being aggressive. That is a high risk of a bite. Some venomous snakes defend themselves, first of all, by doing the snake equivalent of running away. Snakes don't run, in case anybody's wondering, and I do know that. However, the severity of risk if you are bitten is kind of off the charts extreme. That's immediate medical evacuation. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. We head straight to a clinic while I administer first aid along the way because you're going to stop breathing. This is not a good thing, and as a risk we'd never want to come anywhere near. So the mitigation that is required here, prevention layer number 1 is simply be aware of your surroundings. Don't be sticking your hands into little bushes to see what might be down there. Don't roll over rocks to find out what might be underneath them, for example. Awareness at all times. Stay on regular pathways. Don't go bushwhacking in Tanzania. Wear hiking boots when walking. Should a grumpy snake decide to strike you, most snakes strike very low. Hiking boots will reduce the risk that an attempt to bite you actually reaches your skin. Walk normally. Don't try to sneak up on things in places where you're not deliberately trying to find something that looks innocuous like a bird in a tree right next to you. So don't, sneak around in the bushes to surprise the local wildlife. We don't know what's going to be down there. Snakebite is a very bad scene. We don't encounter snakes in Tanzania, so in practice, this just doesn't come up. This is a very different experience if we were in a place like Costa Rica, where snake presence and proximity to humans is much, much higher. In Tanzania, Tanzanians kill snakes whenever they find them, no matter what they are, except perhaps in national parks. And that's because the snakes are so goddamn dangerous. The people don't want anything to do with them being around in their villages or their communities. So they tend to be very low densities of snakes, and the snakes are absolutely terrified, and properly so, of humans. So the risk of a snake bite is absolutely, like, the severity of it, this is intolerable, and it's a disaster if somebody's bitten by a snake, okay? The likelihood of it happening is extremely low. It's almost incalculable how low the likelihood is. But because the risk severity is intolerable, we will treat that as a serious thing. It gets a rating of high risk, and we will behave accordingly. Here's another thing very quickly, just so that I'm not scaring you with stuff that's like completely terrifying all the time. Another common challenge for people in Tanzania, especially in the areas we will visit, is the high altitudes. The probability of encountering this in the course, to use the risk management parlance, is probable, but in fact it is certain. We will be going to these places. You will encounter high elevations. The severity of the risk in the consequence of, in the parlance of the risk management matrix, is medium. Mitigation that's required. I'm just going to tell you what happens to people if you are particularly susceptible to medium elevations. You're going to get short of breath when you walk around. Going for a run might be very difficult. And so you'll need to, if you are in a place where running is actually a safe thing to do, going for a run needs to be adjusted in terms of pace so that you can actually maintain the activity without gassing out. The elevations we're going to be in will never be less than about 800 meters above sea level, dramatically different than Toronto, Ottawa, anywhere in southern Ontario or Quebec, but up to about 2,400 or so meters around the crater rim of Ngoro. We will be doing some walking at elevation. Hill climbing during those walks will be more challenging. If you find yourself out of breath on these walks, you can remind yourself that the reason for this is simply that the air is a lot thinner. Sleep disruptions, this is the thing that sometimes people encounter here that is probably the most annoying thing, but very few people experience it. Sleep disruptions at these elevations can happen. You might find yourself waking up and feeling like a little nervous or tense because it feels like your body's not getting enough air. Unless you have a very significant medical condition that you should be informing us of, you are not having a problem getting enough air at these elevations. We are not in an altitude sickness zone at any time in this course. So here's the risk mitigation measure that we all take. And this is what the Tanzanians will constantly say to you. Pole pole. It just means slowly, slowly. Don't, charge around. Walk slowly. Climb slowly. Go at a gentle, comfortable pace. And sometimes that pace, depending on where you are and what we're doing, sometimes that pace can be crazy slow. And it'll feel ridiculous, but it'll get you there. This reduces the severity of risk to low. And so we don't worry about this very much, but there is a range of things that you will experience that are a little different. So it is an acceptable level of severity, and it is a very certain level of likelihood of experience. That means that we treat it like a medium level of risk overall, and we think about things that we can do to take it down to a low level of risk. We want that severity to be kind of negligible. By the time you're done in Tanzania, after a couple of weeks, you're probably not going to notice the altitude as much at all because you'll have spent a couple of weeks at 1,000 meters or more above sea level. Okay, risk management, as I said, is not complicated. This isn't, an advanced conceptual science course. It's risk management. This is straightforward stuff, common sense, and a look before you leap mentality will go a long way. Keeping yourself safe means that others who are part of your team will also be safer. The converse is true. Putting yourself at risk puts other people at risk as well. Always be considerate. We're here as a group. We're here to support each other and try to make sure we come away with the most positive and wonderful experience collectively that we can possibly create for you. This next sentence is really serious. Even seemingly minor issues can lead to immediate evacuation to medical care. If that happens, it can mean the end of your experience in Tanzania. We will not be taking compromises about this. Should something happen on the course, you're bitten by a mouse or one of the other gajillion rodents that are kicking around there, or little tiny predators that look really cute like ferrets, they bite you, it's medical evacuation time, and we'll bundle you in a safari vehicle, and either me or Allison will go with you to the hospital, and you will not leave the hospital until you have been comprehensively treated for every conceivable thing we can think of and had your wounds bound by a doctor. Don't test those safety boundaries, because the thresholds for us to intervene and pull you out of the course to get you someplace safe, that threshold is low. We will intervene quickly and very strongly if we are ever worried that somebody may be in a situation that is unsafe. We are here to support you and have your backs, even if you don't want us to. Now, there's some thresholds in there around personal permission for interventions and things like that. We won't administer first aid if you don't give us permission and things like that. All the conventional stuff. We will also respect your boundaries, but we cannot take compromises on the safety of the group. Please respect that, okay? It's part of how we have fun on the course. So things that do happen in country that are actually, you're probably going to see stuff like this, see how it actually goes. Street touts. So these are just folks who are trying to sell you stuff. They walk up to you and they've got a handful of things and they're trying to get you to buy something. The likelihood of encountering this in various places is quite high. It's not a very serious problem, but you don't want to get into an argument with somebody about things like this. And if you are not going to buy something from somebody like this, don't stop to have a conversation. Walking somewhere, keep walking. Just politely say, no, thank you, and don't stop. If you stop, you are telling them that you want to have a conversation ending in you buying something. You have sent them a signal that now the next step of that selling you thing process can take place. Bad drivers, that is the rule and not the exception in Tanzania by Canadian standards. People can't drive in Africa. In my experience, no matter where I go, they don't drive well in the sense of how we think about things in Canada. The rule is not pedestrians have right of way that you need to think about. The rule that you need to think about is that the bigger thing that moves fast will kill you when you step in front of it. The thing that is big and heavy, bigger than you, always has the right of way in Tanzania. The other thing you need to think about in Tanzania is that is a left drive country like the United Kingdom or Japan. When you cross a road, look right and then look left. Don't look, do the Canadian thing, quick look left, quick look right, because by the time you look to the right, the safari vehicle that is about to kill you may be too close for you to get out of the way. It's a left drive country. Street chaos. Sometimes there are little urban conflicts where a group of people gets really angry about something and they tend to ignore tourists, but if you don't get yourself out of there, they may not ignore you for long. This sort of thing can happen. Stay away from it if you detect any signs of tension among local populations of people or local groups or individuals. Any signs of tension, you're out of there. Another thing is what is called the pub rescue. Is anybody aware of what the pub rescue refers to? And because I can't see everybody all at once, I can't tell if there's anyone else who's got their hands up, but okay, I'll just say it because it's very straightforward. A few of the places we go will have like a bar where you can get a drink if you want to. That's totally okay. There's nothing intrinsically worrying about that. But you may find that a member of our team is being approached at that bar by another tourist type person, so some European or something, or by a member of a local community. If in any respect it seems like that team member looks uncomfortable, then your job is to approach them and rescue them. This is the pub rescue. The rescue works like this. Hey, I think we have a group meeting that's coming up in a couple of minutes. I'm here to take you to the meeting right now. Can you come with me? We've got to get to the meeting. And you just leave the room. That's the end of the interaction. You're not there to politely say, I think it would be great if you stopped hitting on person X because they look uncomfortable. You're not there for, I mean, as justified as that would be, you're there to extricate your team member from that situation. I will do this by default unless you tell me not to. Having a conversation with a local is totally okay. I do not suggest, very strongly suggest you do not hook up with any local people or tourists on the course. Please just don't do this. Okay, please. Has happened before and it was a problem. Always remember your risk management matrix. Is the thing that is bad about this situation likely? Erring on the side of caution. How bad would it be if it happened? Erring on the side of caution. So things might be more likely than you think. They might be more severe than you anticipate. Okay. Couple of scenarios. I'm just going to ask you some questions. We're actually very nearly done the risk management part here. Okay, you are in Serengeti. Our safari vehicles are stopped in the savannah. There's a large pile of rocks near the vehicles. It looks safe to climb that pile of rocks. Do you climb it? Why or why not? Let's just brainstorm some thinking about this. Give me a reaction. Does it seem like something you could randomly do? Hey, let's go have a look. Okay, so I see some heads shaking. That's good. We want the heads to shake. The first head I saw shaking was, I think it was Kit. Kit, can you tell me why you're shaking your head?
Um, you could fall off the rocks, or
True.
there could be some sort of animal within or behind the rocks that you can't see.
Absolutely. Those are two of the things that you should be thinking about in this situation. But even if those are not the things that occur to you, leaving the safety of where the vehicles are to randomly go climb a pile of rocks in the middle of Serengeti is definitely going off the reservation, although this, kind of little thought experiment doesn't include specific statements like this. we would immediately be calling to you to not climb the pile of rocks. The thing that we would be most concerned about in the case of the nature of like those kinds of piles of rocks that you find in Serengeti is that those are the places where snakes like to hang out. If there's snakes around, they tend to hang out between the hot part of the rocks and the cool shadowed parts of the rocks, and they can more easily thermoregulate between a hot place and a cold place in those zones. At nighttime, it can get quite chilly. The rocks stay warm. That is good for nighttime hunters, especially poikilothermic nighttime hunters. Snakes love kopjes, which are what these big piles of rocks are called. Going on them in an unadvised way is a very dangerous thing to do. Here's another simple example. And again, nothing complex or earth-shattering about this. I just want you to be in the frame of mind of thinking about things that you will encounter when we're there. The group is hiking through a village on the slopes of Kilimanjaro near small huts. An empty hut is next to the trail and it looks interesting. Do you explore it? Why or why not? Okay, somebody else, please jump in. Who else is shaking their heads at this point? Lindsay, I think you were shaking your head. It's a lot of head shaking that's going to happen in this presentation. Lindsay, tell me.
It could not be empty.
It could
There
not be
could be
empty.
someone in there, or it could be someone's home, and don't go breaking in.
Precisely. It it is certainly being used or was built for a purpose, and that purpose is private to the people who built it. In just the same way you wouldn't wander into somebody else's home here, hopefully, don't do it there. The thing is that it will look really different and it might be open. It might not even have a door, but it is still a structure that is owned by somebody else, and we should not be going in. Here's one other thing. You find a tick embedded in your skin. You want to scrape it off quickly with your fingernail because this makes you feel very uncomfortable. Do you do that? Why or why not? Again, this isn't rocket science. You don't do this. What's the risk with a tick that you just quickly like scrape off like that? What can happen? Same rules in Tanzania as apply here to black-legged ticks. Sid,
The head can come off in your skin, but it's also a good idea to identify the tick and then maybe consult somebody who would have a better understanding of the risk associated with that.
yes, that's all exactly correct. If you find a tick embedded in your skin, the best thing is to inform either Dr. McLean or me. And what we will do is we'll break out our tick tweezers, and one of us will very carefully gonna get in there and remove the tick from underneath the mouth parts, which may be in your skin, and get the whole body out. What you don't want to do is if you pull the thing out quickly, you typically have a very high risk of leaving the mouth parts in, and we don't want that because most of the time with these critters, the mouth parts are, if they carry a disease, the mouth parts are infectious, and even if they don't, you'll keep bleeding through the open guts of the animal if the mouth parts are still in your skin. Remember, it injects an anticoagulant to enable blood flow to be more easy, and you don't want to sort of sit there and continue bleeding. In fact, the likelihood of catching a disease from a tick in Tanzania is quite low. You have a much higher chance of catching a disease from anything like that around here, Lyme disease now being a serious risk. These are some of the scenarios that I'm just throwing your way so that you can think through these things. I'm going to describe a little bit about the nature of the experience, but I want to make sure that if there are any questions that I'm seeing them. Can you just let me know if there are questions? Sorry, my screen went away there. Any questions so far? Can I quickly blast through what remains of this presentation? Okay, let's go. So we are going to be arriving at and departing from Kilimanjaro International Airport. This is it is called an international airport, and technically, of course, it is, but it is not an international airport that will be familiar to you in terms of its size relative to anything you are likely to have encountered before. Most of the airports that are international in Canada tend to be large affairs like the Ottawa Airport or Pearson in Toronto. Things that can happen during air travel, however, should be things you are thinking about. Risk management doesn't start wheels down, it starts before wheels up. COVID is a risk during air travel, especially. We can't predict what that risk is going to be. There are new variants coming up all the time. Your likelihood of encountering it probably comes in the zone of probable. That means you'll pass by somebody who's a COVID carrier at some point. That doesn't mean you're going to be exposed to COVID, but the proximity of COVID is likely to be fairly close. Consequently, I would suggest on the flights that you wear high quality masks, wash your hands a lot, and make sure, with soap, do the 20-second thing, and ensure you are vaccinated with the most recent vaccines available to you. You don't have to go insane about this. Just do the things that assume you could be exposed and do what you can to head off the likelihood of a severe case of COVID. A severe case of COVID is a trip ender for many people, and we don't want you to be one of those people. Before you go to Tanzania, make sure you have proof of COVID vaccination. To the best of my knowledge at this time, that doesn't absolutely have to be recent, but I do intend myself to have a recent vaccination sometime in the next month prior to departure, and I will bring proof of that vaccination with me. They may at the border ask you to prove you are vaccinated, and if you are not, they may vaccinate you themselves, and it's better not to get the Tanzanian Border Patrol to administer medical treatments of this kind. It's better to do it with a medical person here instead. The flights are going to be tiring. For some people, you may not have experienced trips on this scale before. So it's going to be an overnight flight. You should try to sleep as much as you can on the plane ride. The trip is quite exhausting. We will be passing through Addis Ababa in Ethiopia for most of us who are doing the conventional Ethiopian Airlines version of this trip. Addis Ababa is a very modern and recognizable airport. All the things that we're used to in airports work the same way there. Do not drink the water anywhere in this place if it comes from a tap or a fountain. You can buy bottled water. That is completely safe if it is properly sealed up. You're not going to find, like, it's always the case there. You're not going to find like resealed water in Tanzanian airports or in Ethiopian airports, but don't drink water unless it's coming out of a bottle. Yellow fever is a risk in Ethiopia. There is no risk of yellow fever in practice in the airport. If you enter the country, that is, you go through customs, then you are technically exposed to yellow fever risk, and you must be vaccinated then to enter Tanzania. In theory, for any visit of 12 hours or less in the airport at Addis, you should not need yellow fever at the airport in Tanzania. When you arrive wheels down in Tanzania, and if they ask you, do you have yellow fever? Say, I never left the airport and I was there for only a short time. To the best of my knowledge, I do not need yellow fever vaccines. They may nevertheless say that you should get it, and they might ask you to purchase the yellow fever vaccine. And last time I checked, it was $50 US, and then they'll give you a shot. I don't particularly think they are really giving you yellow fever vaccine there, but if that's what happens, that's what happens. If you have your travel doctor here gives you yellow fever vaccine, you will get a yellow fever card that indicates you have been vaccinated. That is proof positive, accepted internationally, that you have been vaccinated, and you should not be bothered by anybody in Tanzania about that issue again. Okay, arrival in Kilimanjaro, plane full of tourists are going to disembark. They're going to slowly filter through customs. This bit can be a little bit chaotic. The customs area is not particularly well organized. It's small or has been small in the past, unless they've done something to it this year. And you'll have like a little crowd of people and they'll get lines and the lines don't go very fast. You just got to be patient. It's a drag because everybody's going to be really tired, but we'll get through. You are there for tourism. You're not there for education. For purposes of entering the country, we are not interacting with Tanzanian educational institutions. So do not say that you're taking a course, but have a tourist visa in your passport or printed out separately through an e-visa process, because then there's a mismatch between the purpose of your visit and the nature of your visa, and that will cause you trouble. Our Tanzanian team is going to be waiting for us there. We just jump in the big vehicles that they've got provided. They're going to pack up all our great big suitcases that will hopefully all arrive and may not. And then they're going to drive us to the hotel in Moshi. Allison, are you able to make a comment about a way to pack that might help avoid problems should a bag go missing during transit?
Right. So last year, the advice I gave, and it turned out to be very useful, unfortunately, because a lot of luggage did get misplaced, is just assume as a matter of course that your luggage will be lost. Like go with that assumption in the sense of the point of view that, on your carry-on, any medications that you have to take, any important documents, papers, a full set of clothing, definitely, maybe even bathing suits, because there will be a pool at the place where we land, and bathing suits may not be essential, but you will want to go for a swim if you possibly can. So just what I do when I make these kinds of trips is I just make the assumption that probably my luggage will be lost or delayed, and I just make sure I carry on everything I need for maybe 2 days or 3 days. One of the things that our team, some students last year had little air tags, and they actually put that in their checked luggage. And those were great for helping us track the luggage and keep an eye on it. And we actually had to inform it was Kenya Airs actually, and we actually had to inform them where our luggage was because they couldn't find it, believe it or not. So if you do have little air tags or something like that, it's a great idea. If you have them, just put them in your checked luggage, maybe even your carry-on. It can be useful.
This is good advice. I advise you to follow it. Pack the things that you cannot do without in personal luggage. Otherwise, great big duffel bag. Don't stick fragile stuff in soft duffel bags. They can get broken, smashed. Does happen. Not often, but it does happen. So we're going to be driving to the hotel in Moshi. I think we're arriving either, some of us may arrive late afternoon or very early evening. There's no activities for the rest of the day. We're just there to crash and try to catch up on some sleep. We are indeed designing this part of the trip to be a very soft and gentle landing for everybody. Try to stay up to a regular local bedtime. You want to get your body into local time as fast as you can, and then try to sleep as much as you can that night. First night, usually people sleep through because they're exhausted from the trip. Second night is jet lag day. That is the day when people wake up at 2 a.m. wondering where breakfast is, because in Canada it might be breakfast time or something like that, or dinner time. It's very confusing for your body. Give yourself a bit of leeway. It's okay. Many people will experience the same things as you or have done in the past. Let us know if anything about the experience is concerning or you're very tired. It's a pretty gentle introduction to Tanzania. So the itinerary, going to be a little bit of messing about in Moshi and local areas. That includes Kilimanjaro, a stunning waterfall that's there, some Chaga villages, some coffee roasting. A really neat, it's kind of like a really neat coffee experience that we're going to have there. Komazi experience with the wild dogs and rhinos. Arusha, which is particularly famous for giraffes, but the bird life there is just out of this world. Tarangire National Park, Ngorongoro, Serengeti, back to the airport and thence home. When you get back, the risk management isn't completely over when you return. You're going to be tired from the trip. Do try to get some sleep and rest up. Continue following medical advice through to the conclusion of the advice period. So if they say take meds for 3 days, take the meds for 3 days. That's to make sure that if you caught something in an airport, on your way out the door, that you're dealing with that issue right up until the time when it can no longer be an issue. So follow medical advice right through to the end. Pay very close attention to your health for at least a couple of weeks after you arrive. Jet lag is normal. You're going to be tired because it's an intense trip. We do a lot. There's a lot of traveling, a lot of very intense experiences. But how are you feeling? Drink lots of, good, clean Canadian water when you get back. Make sure that you're getting lots of sleep. If you've got some digestion problem, it's a very common challenge whenever you go to a new place. Microbiotic environment is very different. Make sure you're paying attention to how your body is dealing with stuff like that. If something about your health situation seems slightly concerning to you, see a doctor and don't delay. There's a whole bunch of really weird remote stuff that could conceivably be on the radar screens, and your doctor is the best source of advice on how to treat things like that. Usually a round of antibiotics is going to sort you out, but you might need something other than the travel antibiotics that the doctor gives you should you catch something weird because you're eating strange food in strange places. And then, of course, please do follow through and complete the course requirements. Okay, so stuff to bring. We recommend you bring a sleeping bag. Tents and sleeping mats are provided. If that situation changes, tents will certainly be provided, but sleeping mats, if something about that changes, we'll let you know if we learn there is any change to this. All food is provided. They can accommodate virtually any combination of food restrictions and allergies. Let us know what those are to make sure we are providing advance warning to our team in Tanzania. Bring one big bag with you. Don't pack multiple large suitcases. You can bring up to 2 free on the trip, I believe, but you shouldn't need 2. If you've got 2 huge bags, you're probably overpacking. If you can possibly do it, make that large checked bag a soft-sided duffel bag. Safari staff will be transporting those bags around, but to squeeze everything into the safari vehicle, they are going to be, doing a lot of this kind of thing and slamming stuff on top and then putting straps over the top of it. Great big hard-sided suitcases make that harder to do, and we don't want to make travel become difficult for the logistics group. Bring pens and pencils, of course, a notebook for yourself for personal observations. Binoculars are a very good idea. Your cell phone is not the same as binoculars in terms of optical capacity, okay? Binoculars are uniquely powerful and effective to ensure you actually experience the wildlife around you. Binoculars don't need to be expensive, but not having them will limit the quality of your experience. And if you can lay your hands on a pair of binoculars, I would strongly advise you do. We will bring an extra pair of binoculars or 2. The guides have binoculars as well, so there will be some around. You're not excluded from the course if you can't bring binoculars for some reason. But if you have access to them, I do strongly advise that you bring them. And something to pass the time constructively while we're in transit, because there are going to be times when we got like 4.5 hours of driving to get into the Serengeti. Bumpy as hell. Wear your seat belts. I mean that very seriously. However much you might tend to do that here, you need to do it more reliably in Tanzania, not less. Even if things seem casual, wear your seat belts. Yeah, so you want to be entertained and not bored out of your skull just because we're on long trips like airplanes or field vehicles as we are transiting from one place to another. Communications. Tanzania has great cellular networks. Traditionally, their cell service is much better than it is here in terms of coverage. There are some areas that might still be too remote for reliable cell service, but it's now so good that even on the very top of Mount Kilimanjaro, you get cell access. eSIMs are accessible, and my experience with them and students is that they work. So last year, lots of people used the AirAllo app to access cellular networks in Tanzania. Other apps are out there that do exactly the same thing. I don't care what you use. If you want cell service, that's the way to go. We will not be stopping to get physical SIM cards. That is a very challenging thing to do, believe it or not, in Tanzania. It requires your passport and it takes registration and it's long and involved. It would take us a full day to get a SIM card for everybody. Some wireless networks will be present at the camp, depending on where we are, the hotel especially, or visitor centers of national parks. They can be quite unreliable and they are also usually quite slow. Okay, questions. Absolutely welcoming questions from anybody. But if you don't think of questions just at the moment and you do later, that's fine too. We'll always try to answer your questions. We are here to help. We have your backs. So I see number one here is Sid and then Lindsay.
This might be a dumb question, but you mentioned dressing modestly in urban areas, but should we like wear longer pants while we're just in our camp as well, or is like shorter shorts okay there?
Okay, so this is a really good question and it's not stupid or dumb at all. This is a very good question because the distinction here is not obvious when you're coming into the country. When we are in an area that is made mostly for people visiting Tanzania, so the inside of the hotel compound when we get to Moshi, which is actually a resort. It's really nice, very relaxing. You can wear pretty much whatever you want within sensible reason there. There's nothing weird about it. The Tanzanians there are not going to be offended if you dress like you would at home. That's all good. You can do the same thing when we're on safari. I would be a little careful about wearing like skimpy stuff on safari because you don't want to get bitten by things. And there are little flies that buzz into vehicles and out of vehicles when you're walking through the grass or like or when you're in the vehicle, you know, the tsetse flies in particular, kind of like horse flies or deer flies. They're a real drag and you want to be a little bit covered up around your ankles because they go for ankles in a big way, but basically anything that's exposed. So really skimpy stuff isn't a good idea for bugs, but it's okay. I mean, you could go for a swim, wear whatever you want to wear. Um, skinny dipping is probably a bit off the radar screens there, but like any normal sort of bathing suit thing in a place with a pool, totally okay. You're good. So I think you've had lots of latitude there. It's just that if we find ourselves in a city market, that is not a place where it is good for us to be testing the boundaries of what the Tanzanian people may find inappropriate. We want to be respectful of those kinds of places in particular. The next question was from Lindsay, and I also see Alex.
I've got two quick ones. Should we bring mosquito nets or anything, especially for sleeping?
Okay. Do you want me to answer that first question?
Yeah, sure, because the
Yeah.
other one's not
So
related.
we're going to be doing a lot of camping. When we're camping, hanging a mosquito net is mostly impractical. It's in some circumstances when you travel to Tanzania, you should have what is called a long-lasting insecticide-treated net. That is a thing you drape over your bed and you tuck it under the mattress around the edges. And the plastic of those nets, the plastic mesh, is treated with permethrin or something like that that kills insects when they land on it. So that's a very good way to kill off mosquitoes. However, your tents in Tanzania will be the same sort of camping tents that you'd find at Mountain Equipment Co-op here. They're completely bug proof, but also you really can't hang a net in those places. There's just no way to do it that works well. The net is next to your skin. Something can bite you through the net in that condition. So just doesn't really work. And the short answer to the question is no, I wouldn't do that.
That's fair. And then the other one is just if you have any recommended field guides.
Field guides.
Yeah, like
Um,
ID guides or things like that.
yeah, so it depends on what you're after. I do, and I will bring a couple of big, heavy bird ID books that will be comprehensive for every species found at any time of year in East Africa. Those books are easy because they're not all the same, but they are all excellent. I've never found a terrible version of that. The bird books, I can send out that information specifically. The mammal books tend to come separately, and the particularly good one that I'm going to recommend to you is going to describe mammal behavior in very great detail and a lot of their life history and ecologies in great detail. You do not need to have those things handy. I will have a couple of copies of those things around. And if you wish to use them on the course, you're absolutely welcome to do so. Many people um, build their expectations for these field guides on the basis of what works in Canada. So they think to themselves, okay, so I know that this app Merlin works wonderfully here in Canada, and I can just like stick it out my window and it'll tell me all the birds that are singing with probably 80 or 90% reliability within my neighborhood. That doesn't work for shit in Tanzania. It really doesn't work reliably at all in Tanzania. So if you rely on an e-guide like this, you may find that you have success with it, or you may find that the whole thing is a complete waste of time and then you miss out on stuff. So I wouldn't want that to be the case. By all means, backstop stuff with those apps. I would not rely on them for primary purposes. But I will be bringing those things with us. Allison will have a copy, I'll have a copy, and I'll also have copies of those mammal guides, which are excellent. You can look at them after hours. You can look at the bring them with you in the vehicles. But every car, every safari vehicle will have somebody with natural history experience in the place that we're going. That's from the driver to the other person might be Timba, who's our kind of team lead on the Tanzanian side. Expert birder, expert natural history with decades of experience identifying stuff. And he sometimes sees things that like I just seem like magic to me, like my eyes are not that sharp. So every vehicle will have a natural history interpreter there for you. And please feel free to make use of us while we're in those vehicles. We're here to help, okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Those are good questions. I'll try to remember to send out the specific references for the bird and mammal books. There might be generic everything guides. Our experience has been that we just don't see a lot of reptiles. You're going to probably see agama lizards, which are multicolored lizards. At some point on the trip, you'll see crocs, but you don't need a field guide to identify them because they're the big scary things that look like they could eat you and can at any time. And that's about it. We're not likely to see amphibians. So a generic field guide that includes big sections of reptiles and amphibians is going to be useless for those groups in all likelihood. Antam, I see you are the next person.
I have two
Alex, I'm
questions.
sorry, you were on deck before. Alex, has your question gone away? Or are
Oh
you
yeah,
still
I had the same question, so it's been answered. Thank you.
perfect? Antam, I'm happy to try to answer questions, or Allison could if she's better able to do so.
So I have two questions. First is, do you have experience with anyone that had that instead of getting a yellow fever vaccine, bringing a sort of yellow fever waiver,
Yes,
which kind of replaces
it does.
if they ever ask, you kind of show it, and you're like, okay, like do they accept that most of the
Yes,
time?
our past experience, I mean, I can, I want to be very clear. We have no control over what the immigration and border health people do. But in the past, we have had people with that little kind of like a note from your doctor basically saying, this person should not need to take yellow fever vaccine, or this person should not receive yellow fever vaccine for medical reasons. Both of those things people have brought those kinds of statements with them from a medical practitioner, and they have been accepted. It's a pretty
Okay,
safe bet that they will be in the future. I wish I could kind of nail that one down in a way that was like I guarantee that this will work this way, but
historically
yeah, no,
speaking.
we're hoping. Yeah, it should be fine. But if you ever want to travel to a tropical country again in the future, you may find that yellow fever is actually necessary. And yellow fever is one of the few vaccines in life that is one and done. So it's a lifelong vaccine. If you have it done once, it will be good for you forever, and your yellow fever certificate is permanent. But it's just contextual, it's not a mandatory thing.
My second question is, I don't know if it was in like one of the Tanzania documents earlier in the year, but how many like days worth of clothes would you recommend? And like what's like hand washing or laundry gonna be like when we're there?
So there will be, first question is how many days of clothing? I would bring, like there's a kit list. I think we've sent out the kit list now. Ali, have we done that? Okay.
Yeah.
The kit list includes a sort of a suggested number of changes of clothing kind of built into it. But people have such variation in how quickly they feel their clothes get dirty just by wearing them, not necessarily, spilling their spaghetti or something, but just wearing them. And some people can wear clothing, like the same pair of pants every day for 10 days. And those people are gross. But, you know, I wouldn't do that myself because for me, like I sweat a lot and like my stuff will start really being unpleasant to wear for me before this. So the second part of the first part of the question then is bring several days. For me, what I do is I bring 2 or 3 pairs of comfortable shorts for walking around. I bring a couple of pairs of shorts that will be either I will tend to go running if I can and safely in different places in Tanzania because running there is really cool. So I'll bring athletic stuff and I'll bring something that I will wear as a bathing suit, which tends to be exactly the same kind of shorts. So I bring, maybe 2 or 3 pairs of pants beyond that because it's pretty unusual for the weather to be cold enough that I feel I need pants, but there will be times when it gets chilly and having pants along is a good idea. In theory, I should be bringing lots of t-shirts and a couple of long sleevers, maybe a fleece, definitely a thin shell raincoat. It can rain on us. It's very unlikely to rain. Most of the time when we go, there's not a single raindrop that anyone sees. Last year, as part of the tail end of La Nina globally, Tanzania's dry season was really wet, and it rained on us in Serengeti and hard. Not having a raincoat would have been a real drag.
Anne, you also asked about abilities to wash things. So just to answer your question from my point of view, I'd probably try to bring maybe 4 or 5 days worth of clothes. You will have opportunities to wash things, and that can range from, when you're in the Serengeti, you might have access to cold water only, and that could be in the form of tap, a sink tap or a shower. But if you can bring soap, or you can buy from MEC these little laundry tabs, just something like that just to keep it clean, and you can spread things out on bushes within the camp field. Don't be, and even there a lot of them have thorns. So you
Yeah,
got to be aware of how you do this.
thorns
But
are
you will
natural
have
hangers.
opportunities to dry things, or even on your tent. Some of the hotels we stay in, at least last year, would offer you the option of laundering, and some people took them up on that, but you'll want to bring a little bit of cash in the form of US dollars because they will charge for the service. Not a lot, but they will charge some money,
Yeah,
which
some flat rate.
is not a bad idea in general, guys. Like almost everything you will need on this course will be provided for you and has already been built into your course fees. And, there's a clear list of this, your course fees include X, Y, and Z. So review that. But it's never a bad idea to bring a little bit of money in the form of US dollars if you want to come back with souvenirs, or there might be occasions like you want to hire out for laundry or just odd things that you might not predict. So maybe bring a little bit of money in the form of US dollars.
A very, very short note on the issue of getting your laundry done for you. When that happens, they're not throwing your stuff into a big industrial washing machine. They're getting one of their staff members to hand wash everything. So there'll be like a flat rate per article of clothing, like
Yeah.
$2 American for a pair of underwear, or $3 for a t-shirt. And it's because they've got a scrub based on how much fabric there is. So it's all done by hand in these places typically, rather than in a sort of industrial way that would be more familiar to us or be expected in a place like Canada.
Yeah, it won't be per load, it'll be per item. And they will dry it, at least in one place, they dried it on the rooftop of the hotel where everybody has access to. So we
Yep,
went up to look at Kilimanjaro and everybody's laundry was drying there. So
yep.
just be aware of that.
Yep, and they can't do it overnight usually because it's not an industrial facility. So they won't give it back to you. They'll just tell you, like, we can't do it that fast because if we do it tonight, it'll still be drying tomorrow and you're leaving tomorrow. So not going to work. But I usually wash a bunch of things by hand and just hang them up in a thorn
Yeah.
tree. I do want to say one thing about the local arthropods. When you put your shoes on in the morning, unless you're keeping your shoes inside your tent, shake them out. Shake your shoes out. Why would I say that? Anyone want to take a guess why you shake your shoes out in the morning in a place like Antam?
Be little critters inside, and if you put
Little
your foot in,
critters. Exactly. And what little critter in particular am I concerned about here?
most likely spiders
Well,
or
spiders. Yeah,
centipedes.
actually, the answer is yes for spiders because there could be spiders in there. But if you get bitten by a spider, virtually all spiders are not harmful. They're just like being stung by a bee, which normally for most people will not be a problem, just uncomfortable. What I'm really concerned about is scorpions. There are scorpions and there are no safe ones. So if you get bitten by a scorpion, it is most likely your life is not threatened, but it is medical evacuation time and you're going to feel like shit for a solid couple of weeks. That is not a good thing. So scorpions. Last year, first time we ever encountered a scorpion on the part of the trip that includes places we go this year. We have historically gone other places where scorpions were a bit easier to find. And what it was a little, what do they call it? It's a little orange scorpion. Um, sorry, I've forgotten the name of the damn species, but it was crawling around on my shorts that I'd hung up in a tree at a campground, which was right in the middle of Mtawambu on the edge of the Rift Valley. Very beautiful area. Seems very manicured. Really surprising to find a scorpion there. But getting bitten by that particular scorpion is going to be a medical emergency. Not probably life-threatening, but certainly one that will make you terribly ill for the remainder of the trip. Like you wouldn't be better by the time you got back to Canada. So that kind of thing is it's worth paying attention to. This is why you don't stick your hands inside things kind of randomly to, you know, in places where you're not aware of what's going on. Like your backpack, if it's been living in your tent, it's totally fine. But boots in the morning, I always give them a good shake and I watch what I grab off trees. I was hanging up my laundry and there was a scorpion on it. Not a
So
great
we
thing.
we have a couple of questions. Cassidy, should we be bringing larger tech like computers? I would suggest not to bring a laptop. It's just too unpredictable and might get damaged. If you really, really feel you need it, you can bring it, but my suggestion would be no. I'm not sure I would even necessarily bring an iPad. Definitely last year, a student's iPad was broken beyond repair. So that does happen. So just be
Right.
aware.
And Nikki is asking about tipping. The tipping culture in Tanzania. This is a very relevant question also. Tipping culture in Tanzania is that, tips are really how staff get paid substantially, but it is part of your course fees. So if we're in the resorts, you do not need to leave tips on the table, like when we, leave the meal that you've had in the morning or afternoon or whatever. That is something that we already have built into the system. We leave a tip in all the places we go. We'll have an armed ranger walking with us in Arusha National Park. We tip that person separately. You do not need to deal with that at all. The only monies that you need to bring, first of all, they should be in US dollars, which are accessible at any bank in normal bank in Canada. Just walk in and say, I want to buy some US dollars. And that'll be for personal articles, or if you want to buy yourself a beer or something like that somewhere.
Or Pringles.
That's a common thing. There are some Pringles flavors in Tanzania that you will not find elsewhere. It's very weird how many
It is
kinds of
very
Pringles
weird.
there are out there. So yeah, tipping culture, we're mostly sorted with tips, but stuff you do that is a little bit outside the boundaries of regular course activities, that's a space where you may choose to do stuff like that. But mostly we'll have your back completely and you don't need to worry about it. We don't want you to have to feel like there's this uncertainty and pressure on you. There isn't. How much money would you recommend we bring? Really depends on you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you brought, I don't know, $50 US or something like that, you're probably pretty much covered. But that will not be great for some tourist souvenir type purposes. You know, some people like to buy, I don't know, like a T-shirt at the end of these trips. The T-shirt is probably going to cost you on the order of $20 or $25 US. You buy yourself a sweatshirt or a fleece, cost you $30 or $40 or $50 US. So, you know, that's going to require different levels of funds. Credit cards typically work, but not always because they still are, you know, they're electronically verified and sometimes networks just don't work. So that's a bit uncertain. Cash does work. So if you bring $100 or 200, you should be covered for pretty much any eventuality that would come up because of things like wanting to buy something personally. But don't ever feel there are going to be activities that we do where we're going through a place and then at the end of the activity, somebody might like to say to you, well, you now have the option of buying something. Please understand that there is never going to be an expectation or the slightest bit of pressure from us in regard to doing that. So the coffee place in particular, they like to sell some of their little ball things of coffee that you have just roasted or that are roasted like the day before by them. You can do that if you want. We don't get kickbacks on things like this, but we also we recognize that you may want to because the coffee is amazing and distinctive. But there's absolutely no obligation or pressure to do so, and you should know that in advance. So if you walk away without buying something, we're not going to be like, oh, that person didn't buy enough coffee. No, this just doesn't happen. Okay, so please don't ever feel pressured. We are there only to support you and to help you along the way with this course. Any
Visas
other
usually
questions?
visas usually do work, just to add to Jeremy's credit cards, rather, I should
Yep.
say. But do not expect that we will be able to bring you to an ATM and that your bank card would work. So, you know, bring cash and maybe a credit card with the knowledge that usually it works, occasionally it doesn't. ATMs will not be accessible to us.
Yeah, count on them not being accessible, and then if you get a positive surprise because you needed it, that's great, but plan for it to be inaccessible. They're not really very good outside of the major city that we start off in. Any other questions? And again, if you think of something later, just send it out and we can respond to you directly or we'll respond to everybody in the group to make sure everybody hears the answer.
I have a couple of things that I'm going to add, just from my own knowledge as somebody who loves traveling and has traveled a fair bit. Melatonin is not a bad idea to consider bringing with you if you want to have something that helps you adjust a little bit to jet lag or even to sleep on the plane. It's something that I do. It's entirely optional. It's just something you might want to think about. In some respect, usually when people travel, and have something go wrong, quite often it's because they've eaten something, that disagrees with their digestion and they get some, foodborne illness, which might just be nothing more than diarrhea. But you guys have spent a lot of money and you've made this course a priority, and the last thing you want to do is be stuck in your hotel room or even worse, a tent, with diarrhea and missing out on the opportunities. So, generally speaking, when you're traveling in countries and you're not so sure about food hygiene, the rule of thumb is if it's hot, it's safer to drink than if it's not hot. And so when I'm traveling to countries within Africa, for example, or many other places, if it's a juice and I'm not sure where the water came from, I'll pass on it. Ice cubes can be an area where people trip up. They'll get bottled water and then they'll put ice cubes in. That ice cube may or may not be from filtered water. So if you have to choose, something like a tea or a coffee is not invariably, but it's a pretty safe bet, so hot drinks, same thing for foods. Salads, usually if people get something foodborne illness traveling, generally it's often a salad. They'll eat salads, and the people have sometimes this idea that I don't trust the meats. Actually, meats can be relatively safe if they're cooked. So cooked foods tend to be relatively safe, but salads and salad bars. Having said all of this, the Tanzania field crew are amazing, and the food is very high quality, and you will only be offered bottled water and more than you'll ever drink. Um, it's just that there may be on occasion when we're staying in a hotel and we're eating the hotel food, the food that was prepared at the hotel restaurant or something like that. Even then, we've chosen high quality places, but there's no guarantees. And because this is such an important experience for you guys, you just don't want to be feeling ill. If in doubt, go for something hot or pass on salads, would be my general advice.
Yeah, all that is really important advice. This is the single most common complaint that people have when they travel to someplace new is that they get upset tummy, common just microbiotic environment that's novel to them. And that microbiotic environment, takes a little time to get used to. You're not there long enough to get used to it. And it really sucks. But this is why, travel doctor is going to very likely prescribe to you um, some little bottled pill thing that like antibiotic. It can be Cipro, but it's more usually amoxicillin these days or azithromycin. And that is a kind of like a nuclear weapon for tummy bugs. You're not really supposed to use it casually, I should add. Use according to the medical advice. We will also have a very well-stocked first aid kit with non-prescription medicine in it, various kinds. And if you need access to something that you would just pick up off the shelf from a drugstore, if you were in a drugstore to deal with something, we will be very happy to provide it to you, but you must make that choice. We will not be telling you, this is the medicine you need for this, or effectively pretending that we are in a position to prescribe something to you. We are not those people, okay? But we are pretty good at, just dealing with day-to-day stuff.
Paige has a question.
If you get medically evacuated, will you get a partial refund? No. The costs are all borne up front. So all of the costs that are associated with the course have almost already been spent to secure things like access to facilities or, like to rent the safari vehicles, to pay the staff who are now reserved for this time period. It might be conceivable that you could have a conversation with the company that we use. They're friends of mine, and we can facilitate that conversation, but we would not be expecting that somebody would get a refund. That will be part of the risks that we individually each incur by being in a very new place. In the history of this course, no one has ever been medically evacuated or evacuated for any reason.
Do you think travel
mentioning this for
insurance?
Yeah, so that's a thing where I can't advise on the nature of travel insurance, but if your family has supplemental health insurance, it is a very good idea to bring that policy information with you. If you find yourself in a clinic, your Ontario health card, if that's what you rely on, isn't going to be of any use, at least initially. You will need to pay for something and get reimbursed for it later. But you will see in the waiver that those issues are described in a general way. And those are all risks that each of us individually must incur to travel to a place like this. I would love to be in a situation where I could offer you a soft landing if something happens, but when we can't, there's no way for us to guarantee that things will work in a simple, conventional, and familiar way for you, should you be in a really unprecedented situation for us in terms of personal health. Elizabeth has her hand up.
What about for like the academics, like the school portion of this course?
which is really what we're supposed to be talking about mostly. Absolutely. We're going to provide you with a ton of stuff over the course of the summer that will make all of that absolutely transparent from beginning to end. We're going to be giving you each a field book that includes a detailed summary of all of the sort of basic information, a copy of the waiver as a reminder that we'll be sending out imminently. It'll include a map of places that we go in a general itinerary sense, and it'll include specific questions related to the places that we go that will be part of how we evaluate your learning in the course. So all of that is going to be provided to you well in advance. So you're going to have lots of time to prepare, and indeed you'll be specifically asked to prepare for to a reasonable extent prior to getting to the place itself. So all of that, I promise you, it's going to be totally clear and totally transparent. But if at any point you start feeling like you just really want to know, send us a question and we can send you a brief version of all of that material to give you a sort of a heads up. But that, of course, is really what we're going to be doing mostly. We're not mostly going to be sort of living in fear of the theoretical snake around the corner or something. It's most of the time we're just going to be experiencing things that I hope you will find to be truly wonderful. And that is our objective and how we design this thing.
Great, thank you. And then we had an assignment due on the 30th for the risk management. Will that be, I don't think we've received it, right? Is that
No,
going to be sent?
you have not, because
Sure.
it would have been a sort of uninterpretable thing for you prior to this presentation, but that will be coming in the next 24, 36 hours, okay?
Awesome, thank you.
If for some reason I don't send you or Allison does not send you that assignment, please do feel absolutely free to send us a reminder. I thought you said it was 24 hours. Anyway, it's okay to send us little reminders like, oh, can we expect this soon, please? It's all good. That is coming, and you'll have lots of time. The risk management assignment, I should say, is nothing about risk management is intrinsically difficult. So you're not going to have to derive, the partial derivatives of anything for this assignment. It's all very straightforward stuff. But go through the motions carefully and thoughtfully and take it seriously, because risk management is a serious activity, not an intellectually difficult one. You're not going to find it hard, and it's just like it's pass fail. And let's work that through really quickly. If you do something in the risk management assignment that seems like you really are not internalizing the core concepts and applying them in a way that is sensible, we will offer you feedback to suggest ways in which it can be improved, and then you can improve it and send it to us, and we'll just do that back and forth until you get it to the point where it's fine. But in the history of this class, we have virtually never had to do that to anybody. It requires a special kind of casualness to not be able to do that to an acceptable standard. It is not hard. Any other questions? All right. So we are now entering the phase where Africa travel should be thought of as imminent. A lot of preparations are going to be taking place over the next, 2 months and 2 weeks. Do the things that are necessary. Now is the time, if you haven't already done it, now is the time to do that travel appointment. Check your passport and make sure it's valid for the appropriate time. Begin the e-visa process. We will send you a note about what that looks like, with details about the correct way to proceed. You're applying for a tourist visa. We can't advise you, if you're not a Canadian national, about what that looks like, because your experience may be different, but it's pretty straightforward. But the website that the Tanzanians have prepared for this purpose has historically been a little bit flaky. But follow the instructions and it should work fine. That is the usual experience. Yes, and as Allison has written here, do not apply for a student visa or an educational visa. Even though we are in a course, what we are doing is tourist activities. The things that we do that are educational are private to us. and not interactive with Tanzanian educational institutions. So that stuff is all going to be forthcoming. Please take extra care. You don't want to do things like break a leg the night before you travel. I hope everybody has a wonderful summer. It's wonderful to have had the chance to meet you all, even in this really cursory way. I think we're going to have a wonderful time. All of this advanced planning that we're doing is designed to maximize the chances that we have an absolutely unique and life-alteringly positive experience. That is our aim here. If you think of things that we can do that make that more likely, please let us know. We are absolutely open to your thoughts and suggestions, and if we can, we will incorporate all good ideas for making things better for the people who participate here. We're looking forward to meeting each of you in person. And I think that wraps us up for today. We're out of questions for the time being. But if you think of others, send them our way. We'll respond as soon as we can. And feel free to send us reminders if we miss a message and don't get back to you in a very timely way.
Thank you
Take
very
care,
much.
folks.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
I'm not sure Matt's still here.
Matt is